When we really look at the messages that we're carrying around motherhood and we do the inside work to clear them, then it opens us up to incredible things starting to be unleashed in our life.
Hello there and welcome to the My Future Business Show. Hope you're doing really well. Tell you what, the weather where we are today is windy and blustery, and I know that my next guest is in a location that's full of sun and summer. I tell you what, I wish I was there right now. But on today's show, I have the pleasure of welcoming author and coach Beth Rivelli to the show. Welcome to the show, Beth.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I do love the sunshine. I love it.
Let's swap places now. You and I, we're going to be talking about your book and your work called Blow Up Your Motherhood Clock, Finding Joy With or Without the Baby, and how to create safe spaces for women who are on their way to motherhood in a way that empowers them and helps them find freedom, joy, and power along the way. Now, that is a mouthful to get out, and we're obviously going to explore what that actually means. But tell us, first things first, Beth, where are you calling in from today?
Yes, so you said that you live near wine country in
Oh, yes.
Australia. I am actually in wine country in California. So I live in Sonoma, California, which is, you probably heard of Napa, Sonoma.
Absolutely.
Yes, it is the area that in the 70s, or in Napa at least, they had the big competition against the French wines and won, which is what, made
Of
California
course.
wine, California wine. And so I live in that area. It's awesome. It's beautiful. And the town I'm in, Sonoma, it's gorgeous. It's one of those places where you come to and you go, wow, it's kind of small town. And they're very intentional about keeping it that way.
Oh, yeah.
But you kind of go every week, it's like, I love this town more. I love it more and more all the time. And I was just talking with somebody else last night I met who's lived here about the same amount of time that we have, which is just over a year. And he said the same thing without any prompting. It's really weird. I happen to like this town more and more all the time.
Now, tell me, is that, do you still find, like I do, that there's that, I guess, that small town connection between people?
Yes, very much so. It's people who grew up here. That's one thing too. People stay. Not everybody leaves. And if they go to the big city, they go to Napa, which isn't that big. But it is very small town. I like to describe Sonoma as an agricultural town with Michelin star restaurants and world-class wines.
Oh, yes, fantastic. Now, do you enjoy a drop? And if so, what drop do you enjoy?
Oh my goodness, so many drops. It's so hard to say. The winery that we love, they have a restaurant and a tasting room in the square, in Sonoma Square, and it's called Stone Edge.
Very
Gorgeous,
nice. Yep.
beautiful wines. Love it. There's so much here. Auteur wines are amazing as well. There's there are hundreds of wineries in this area, and I will meet people and they'll say, oh, well, when we go there, we love to go to, and I'm like, never heard of it.
Never heard of it. Yeah, no, that's wonderful feedback. Now, I often find my wife and I enjoy just sitting on over the rolling hills at one of the tasting places, having a lunch. Do you enjoy that? What do you enjoy? Are you a foodie? Or do you like hanging out with friends, wasting the day away?
For sure. I totally love that. Actually, my boyfriend and I, it's one of the things we love to do on the weekend. So because we live about 2.5 blocks from Sonoma Square, where a lot of tasting rooms and restaurants are, we'll just wander down there, and we don't bother to get reservations anymore. We just decide, where do we want to go? Unless it's like Stone Edge, where you absolutely have to have one. But most places, like, we'll go to and be like, well, we'll just show up and see what happens.
Yep.
We'll just, and it is fun, that small town feel that you referred to. It's fun, like when you start to get to know people, and then you walk by some place and they're like, oh, hey, hey, do you want a glass of wine? And then you kind of hang out with them.
Yes, please.
It's fun.
Yeah, very nice place, environment to connect with new people, that's for sure and certain. Now, beyond doing that, do you have anything else you enjoy doing? Do you have any hobbies? Do you do anything interesting?
A whole lot of things, yeah. Actually, probably one of the main things in my life, other than my business and relationships and stuff, is CrossFit. So I'm a CrossFitter. I've been doing it for 13 years. I actually am a CrossFit coach as well.
Okay. Yeah, tell me, what is CrossFit exactly?
Oh, CrossFit, I should be able to give you like the very standard definition,
Yes,
because I
please.
just took my
Keep it
test.
simple.
Just took my test a few months ago, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to do good at that. But it's really like it's varied movements, high functional like movements at like varied ones. You want to switch it up all of the time,
Yep.
and it's intense. So you're always thinking about different systems in the body being activated and combining the activation of those systems. Like, so you have different kinds of systems being activated, or a system being activated for, like, let's say weightlifting, versus, running, doing a 400-meter run, an 800-meter run, running a
Yep.
mile.
Yep.
So you want to combine all of those, and you get optimal fitness by combining those. So,
Oh, fantastic. No, well, look, that's one of the things that I think is very important for a busy business person like yourself and many others that I speak with, that we talk about routine. What's a day look like for you? Are you an early riser? And tell us a little bit about your days.
my days, so when I wake up, I'm very committed to having my time in the morning where I can really tune in and be connected to myself and to spirit. So I'm very, I have a spirituality, and I want to make sure that I'm tuned in for the day. So I usually do that by going for a walk.
Yep.
Sometimes take my journal with me. There's so much nature where I live that I get to go enjoy. Sometimes there's this beautiful eucalyptus tree, and that's one thing I love about California is the eucalyptus trees. They smell so good. And there's a huge one. It is so old. I would be curious to find out how many hundreds of years old.
Yeah,
But
wow.
it's so big, and I go by it, and it that makes me happy in the mornings.
Just
I
the
like to see
smell,
that tree. Yes.
eucalyptus trees, absolutely. I know the smell. We love it that much. We bottle it, don't we? So
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now tell me,
It's beautiful.
are you into pets? Do you enjoy pets?
Not necessarily,
Not
no.
necessarily. Not a pet person?
I am not a pet person.
Less is more.
I know, yes, a lot. Well, here's the thing. For over the years, I've always been such a traveler that
Yep.
having a pet seemed like a cruel thing because I would be abandoning it often.
Oh, no, well, look, I appreciate that. That's for sure and certain. I love
Yeah.
travel. Now, where's your favourite destination? Are you still looking for that destination?
No, Italy for sure.
Italy. Okay.
Yes.
What did you like about it?
Well, I feel at home when I go there. My family is my dad's side. Part of it was from there. So there's just something about it. It's interesting. Just got off the phone with one of my coaching clients, and she just made her own trek back to England where her family was originally from. And it was just amazing, like, what was activated in her by being there, and the really cool coincidences that happened that just energized her. And I feel the same way when I go to Italy. Like, there's something about being there that I go, yeah, these are my people. Like, I get
Yeah.
them. They get me.
There's there's our home, and then there's the real home, isn't there?
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
spiritual home almost.
Yes, exactly.
Now, tell me a little bit about your family. I know you talk about them. Let's go back a few years. What was life like growing up with your family?
Oh, goodness. So I come from a very big family. My father is from a family of 11. He's the youngest of 11 children. The It's no surprise that his parents met at church. They were Catholic,
Yep.
obviously. They had 11 kids,
Yeah.
Irish, Italian, and Catholic. Very traditional, like, kind of American story.
Yes.
They had 11 kids. I come from a family of 5 girls, and I am the second of the 5 girls. So because my dad is from a family of 11, and of all 11 children, the least amount of children any one of them had was 4.
Wow.
So I have like 52 cousins on my dad's
Oh,
side.
that's incredible.
Yeah, it is really incredible. And which made for a lot of community growing up because my parents were extremely extroverted, very social. We were the house where people hung out.
Now,
So,
I tell you one thing, if I may interject. I grew up, my best mate's Italian, and I tell you what, every time we would go around his places, Nonna would say, "You are not leaving until you have a feed. You have something to eat." And I said, "Look, I've just eaten." And every time I'd go home and I'd go to my own parents, "Oh, look, I'm so full I can't eat anymore." Is that the same sort of environment that goes on in your place?
exactly. Yes.
Yeah, love it.
There's so much food pushed on you. Oh, have some more. Have
Have
some
some more,
more.
just a little bit more. Now, what's your
Yeah.
favourite meal? Do you have a favourite?
Whoa.
So many to choose from.
You know what? My diet is a little bit different. I don't always eat Italian food unless I'm at my dad's house,
Right.
my or in Italy. But I, and I wouldn't even consider this Italian, although Italian cuisine would include this food. But one of my favorite foods is artichokes. I love
Oh,
artichokes so much,
yeah, wow.
and I've made them all different kinds of ways: fried, stuffed, boiled, steamed,
Flipped upside down.
grilled.
I love this
Yeah.
feedback. Great conversation we're having now. Tell me, what when you were growing up around your siblings and your parents, what's a fond memory that you can recall that stands out for you that you often reflect on?
The music. So I come from a musical family as well. And the singing, no matter what was going on in our family, we always had song to bring us together.
Yeah, beautiful. And that's the thing we're missing nowadays, isn't it? We're so disconnected in our
Yeah.
environments and our families because of technology or distance through travel or whatever it might be. How important is that networking between the family for you?
It's very important. I actually so I live in California, but most of my family is in the Chicago area. But I was just back there for 2.5 weeks, and it fills my love cup to go
Yeah.
back and hang out with them.
You seem to me to have a nice balance in your life. That's the impression I'm getting. Now, tell me, is it important for you to step away from the business, the work that you're doing for the people that you serve, and have some time for yourself and relax? Is that important?
It's extremely important. I mean, it's important for any entrepreneur, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's important to disconnect. And I'm sure you've seen this before. I mean, there are plenty of studies out there that talk about the importance of that space, in our lives. And that a lot of times the ideas, the creativity actually gets to flow when we do the stepping away. And even though it's really tempting, especially in our very capitalistic society, to just go, go, go,
Yep.
and there's just something that's ingrained, I know in myself, from a young age of like what it means to go and all the things that we need to do and the sense of guilt that can come up when you're not. And I've had to
Yep.
really practice being still, practice pulling away, even if the guilt comes up and I go, no, I need this.
I
I need
need
to
to.
do this.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me, we're talking about entrepreneurialism. What was your first experience? Mine was washing cars.
Oh, yeah. Okay. The very first one, yes, was probably a lemonade stand
Oh
as
yes,
a kid.
classic.
Very typical.
Now you obviously have gone a long way since the lemonade stand. What was your first, I guess, your first foray into the work that you're doing? Did you have any prior businesses? Tell us a little bit, I guess, about your professional background.
Yeah, I'd love to. I actually had a business that I started in 2010 that was a project management consulting business. And that was really my first foray into like, I'm doing nothing else and I'm it.
Yep. Yep.
Any money I make is on me to figure it out. So that was a really great, also very challenging, but super growth oriented experience during that time. So that actually gives you a good,
Feel
that's
for it.
like a segue into
Yeah.
my past, which was in technology and project management. I did that for a very long time, started it in the late 90s, actually, and, and then got very serious about it around 2006
Yep.
when my eyes started to be open to the possibilities of what existed out there, which, getting your PMP certification, which stands for Project Management Professional, started in like early 2000s, learning about what's called Agile. And I had to work really hard to
Yeah.
learn Agile and to understand it. Because at a point I was working in a software development department and they threw me out of the department because they said they didn't need me anymore because they were doing Agile. They no longer needed project managers, which we now know to be a huge
No.
fallacy. But at the
Yes.
time, it was such a new thing and people were learning it and they didn't understand. And by left that company in 2010 to start my own company,
Yep.
they came to me and they're like, yeah, we realize we do need you. So I was
Yeah.
like,
Absolutely.
yes, you do, but I'm leaving. See ya. So
Now, Now, it's interesting. You would have a very unique perspective on technology, and I'm wondering if we could just very quickly ask you a question about your view on
Sure.
artificial intelligence. What do you think about that?
Oh, wow. Yes. It's so funny. I just heard a guy, and I cannot remember his name. I went to this really cool gathering in Sonoma that's called the Sonoma Valley Authors Festival, and they had an expert there on AI talking about it. And I'm going to say that the impression I walked away with is we're doomed.
Yeah.
That was the impression I walked away with. And he really was trying to put a positive spin on it by saying, it really depends on how human beings use it. And yes, but, I'm unfortunately also a big sci-fi geek. So I'm
Oh,
a little bit colored by that
I
perspective.
bet you are. Now, I was actually going to ask you about movies and sci-fi and that. Are you a movie sort of goer, or do you like series?
Both. I
Both?
do. I do both. But these days, more series. But I do love movies. Actually, I was a film major in college, so I was in communications and film, and I started out in film in San Francisco. That was my foundation in my life in my early 20s.
I find movies to be fascinating, not only for for the movie itself, but for the stories that they tell. And there is obviously a very defined, well-known structure. The likes of Star Wars uses it. How important is story in your line of work and telling people about experiences and that sort
Oh
of
my
thing?
God, it's huge. I mean, story is important everywhere. It's how people connect to what we're up to.
Yep.
That I mean, I've been trained and taught to, use your story when you're talking to potential clients. Use your story in things that you write. Like in my book, my story is a huge part of the book
Yep.
at the beginning, and I interweave it as well into some of the, I don't know, yeah, lessons, for lack of a better term, that
Yep.
I share with people.
Yeah,
So,
fantastic feedback. Now, you ventured into technology early on in your career, but there would have been some people in your life as you were growing up, I guess in those formative years, that might have left an impression on you. Who are the people in your life that that have inspired you to become the person that you are today? Do you think?
my mother, for sure. My mother inspired me in teaching me to really think about life and also not to be scared to reach out for support and help when I needed it. And that's a huge skill to have. I've walked through some difficult times in my life, and if I didn't have that skill, I don't know if I would be where I am today.
The fear, that's can be omnipresent for a lot of entrepreneurs, and I think it's a good opportunity now to talk a little bit about mindset.
Yeah.
You've shifted away from I guess the relative safety of a corporate structure at some point in your life, and you've gone out on your own. How did you manage your mindset and the self-talk during those periods of time?
Yeah. Which periods in particular
I like the
are you
moment that
asking
you've
about?
left the corporate world and you've
Oh,
decided to go on your own.
okay. So yes, my last gig that I had, which was an amazing job actually, was at Salesforce. I worked there for
Oh, wonderful.
about 5 years,
Yep.
and I did not leave that job because I didn't like it. I left that job because I needed to pursue my passion in life. I needed to do what was next. And
Yep.
I knew that if I was on my deathbed and I looked back, that I would regret not having made the shift for myself. I'm not going to say that it's been easy. I'm not going to say that there aren't moments when I go, why did I leave that job? I'm not going to say any of that. That's all part of being an entrepreneur. And so that's what you're talking about, is what do you do in those moments, right? Like, how do
Yep.
you
Yep.
shift your mindset and how do you keep going? And for me, the base of a lot of it is mission. So what is my mission? What's my why or my what for? Like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And what do I believe in? And do I believe in it enough that it needs to continue to go forward? Because I don't want to abandon the passion. I don't want to abandon the idea that I feel in a way I've been given.
Yep.
And I don't know if you've ever read the book Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, but she talks about ideas roaming the world, looking for people to take them and steward them. And she gives some really interesting examples of a proof of why she says this is true. But I feel like I got a spiritual download in regard to the work that I'm doing, and it's on me and part of my mission in life to move that forward. Now, it doesn't mean it's always going to look exactly like it looked last year or even today, but it's always evolving as I evolve in life, and it's evolving a little bit right now. So
Yes, yes.
I think mission's really important. The other part is understanding what your definition of success is.
Yep.
That's super important, because if you get hung up on one thing, then it may get in the way of you being able to move forward. Like if this one thing doesn't happen, right? Or it doesn't happen the way I
Yep.
want. It's
Yep.
just the constant adaptability, the constant like belief in who you are, who I am as a person, and that I'm worthy of these things happening for me in the world and for others in the world. And the other thing is the impact. I want to make an impact. I want to
Of course.
change the world, one woman at a time. and
Yes, well,
you know,
I think there's some quite relevant for me to bring up a Facebook post I read of yours about your book recently. What it showed through for me was your willingness to change direction a little bit, make sure that you were living to your authentic self, because I know that the community that is around you follows you closely and they love the work that you're doing. And that was the one of the very first posts I'd ever read about you in terms of your book update, and it really struck home immediately that, hey, look, I am actually not going to rush this. I'm going to get this right, and then I'm going to release it. Tell me a little bit about the decisions leading up to that moment.
Oh, God, I'm like shaking my head because you have no idea the turmoil that I went through going through this process. This
Yeah.
is like, in the world that I live in, which is the coach world, it's very common that coaches write books. And
Yep.
the way that at least I've interpreted this whole process is that books are more of like a calling card or a way to make yourself credible. And you work the algorithms in Amazon and you get to be a best-selling author and you get to tell people that you're a best-selling author, and it gives you credibility, right? Which helps you
Yep.
to get clients. So that's more and obviously you have a message to share as well, right? And that's important. I don't want to water that part of it all
No,
down.
no, no, no.
but the other what started to happen for me is in February I went to a conference in San Francisco called the San Francisco Writers Conference, and I created special cards that advertised my book. I created, I had printed out a few chapters of my book. Like, you actually get to go to this and pitch your book to publishers, to
Oh,
publicists,
yep.
to book coaches, and get feedback. You actually practice pitching your book to groups of people if you put yourself in that position. I mean, it's very scary if you've never done it
I
before.
can
And
imagine
it's
public
very,
speaking.
yeah, it's very vulnerable. And so, but a great thing. I mean, I walked away energized because you know how it is when you push yourself outside your comfort zone. It's like, whoa, I did that. That's
You
so
did it.
cool. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
So I talked to some people, but what it ended up happening for me at the end was realizing that there's this, there's the whole traditional publishing world, which I hadn't really included myself in and I realized I had automatically excluded myself from the possibility of ever being published by a traditional publisher. And so, and the reason for it was just because, well, I'm just this small coach who, and you have all these stories around it. And I thought, no, like there actually might be some other options here. So that was the first thing. And it just blew, I didn't know what to do. Here's the other part of that.
Yep.
The messaging from a traditional publishing world is don't even bother to try to publish your book until you have more of a platform that's set up. Now that could translate to national coverage on television and magazines, newspapers. It could translate to the number of followers you have combined with other things. But a lot of people say followers aren't as important, but that it's more about the coverage. And because publishers want to know, I mean, they are also in a business. And so they want to know that you're going to sell a lot of books. It makes
Yep.
sense,
Yep.
right?
Of course. Of course.
And so I was so influenced by that. And I thought, okay, it really forced me to have to think about what is the reason I'm doing this book? Why am I doing it? Because I don't have to listen to this. I was already on the path of self-publishing. I was very close to finishing my book, actually. And I thought, I could just keep doing that and I can release it. Cool. Or I could do it a little differently. And the thing that put me over the edge was I have a friend who did get her book published. She's doing very well with it. It was published by a publisher who I think I would not say is a hybrid, but something similar.
Yep.
And she was kind enough to give my book to the CEO who read it along with some of her editors, and they gave me some feedback. And I was like, maybe I do want to do this differently, because what if I want to reach more people? What if I want my impact to be bigger? I could go ahead and continue to self-publish my book in this way I am and put it out there, and it might do great. Who knows? But what if I actually get access to a distribution channel off the bat?
A
And
real
so,
one.
yeah. And so that's what had me think about it. And my book at the time was about 21,000 words. And to have a real published quote unquote book, it has to be 60,000. So I decided to go ahead and pull back and
Yep.
actually fill my book with more stories of women who illustrate the work that I'm putting forth, and also put more of what they asked for was more of me, more of
You.
my heart. Because even though I tell my story, it wasn't coming across to people where they could really feel it in the way that they wanted to grab people in. And so I said, okay, I'm going to revisit that. I'm going to make it bigger. I'm going to try to get it like published. And so that is where I
That's it.
landed. That's
No,
it.
well, look, that's really powerful feedback for anybody who's been waiting on this book, because I'm sure now, after hearing this, they're going to be chomping at the bit, as they say, to get their hands on this book. Now, where did you come up with the name? Is it still the same name? Blow Up Your Motherhood Clock, Finding Joy With or Without the Baby? Your baby? Is that it?
At this point it is, yes.
Yep.
And just a quick aside, what I'm going to do with my current book, I've been working with a book coach right now who we're taking like my story in the front of it, kind of pared it down, and the 7 steps that I present in there, which are really my program.
Yep.
I will offer as all that as a download to people, so that women can benefit from the work without needing to wait for the
To
book.
wait. Oh, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm going to do that as a download. But otherwise it'll be bigger in the end.
Well,
So I'm
tell us. Sorry. Go
what I
ahead.
can't, what was your question again?
No, I was just wondering if the title of the book was still
Oh,
the same. So, yeah.
yeah. As far as I know, but
Yep.
time will tell.
Time will tell. Now, I think it's an opportune time to talk about, I guess, the structure. Is the structure within the book going to be, or is it the same as your programs, your coaching programs? Tell us a little bit about what people will find, women in particular.
Sure. Yeah. What they'll find is definitely what I call the experience, the blow up the clock motherhood design experience. They will definitely find that. And there are 7 steps. I hate to call it steps, to be honest, but it's what it is.
That's what it
7
is.
steps in the experience
Yep.
that they can walk through. Just steps always to me sounds so, what's the word?
Produced.
Yes, produced or prescriptive.
Yep.
Like it's do these 7 steps and then you'll have
No,
this.
knowing
That.
knowing
Yeah,
how important authenticity is for you, I can
yeah,
understand.
yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, it starts out with really explaining to people what the foundation is of the book, what it's about, what I'm appealing to in that, like asking them to look at for themselves,
Yep.
because this part of our lives as women, this motherhood, what I call the motherhood story. And the motherhood story exists for anyone who has the potential to be a mom. And the motherhood story starts when, as I define it, at the moment we became conscious in our lives that we could someday be a mom. So for me, for example, when I was 3 years old, my baby sister came home from the hospital, and I remember the excitement that I felt that I would get to hold her. And I remember my mom going, okay, you have to sit on the couch, because of course I was too young. Didn't want me to drop her. So she's like, you have to sit on the couch and hold her, and then you can hold her. And I just remember how thrilling that was for me. And I think that was like a moment of consciousness for me that I could someday be a mom. Now, here's the thing. I was never the kind of girl that played with dolls. I was out doing sports all the time,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
And so, but that stuck with me. And I say that the motherhood story starts at that moment. And then along the way, like with anything in life, we develop myths, assumptions, stories, interpretations around something. And we do the same thing with motherhood. And so in this day and age, it's very different. In the past, people, it just, we kind of took motherhood for granted, right? It just
Yep. Yep.
happened. Well, now that's not how we see motherhood. We have a very different view of what it is to become a mom in our world. And so there's much more intentionality around it. It's a decision. But what ends up happening is a lot of women put it off, put it off. I call it next year syndrome. They just keep
Yep.
putting it off because it's so overwhelming and so scary that they don't want to do anything with it. But I'm going to get back to my original point. I talk about the whole idea of motherhood as being, there's almost like this hidden source of power inside of us that when we really look at the messages that we're carrying around motherhood and we do the inside work to clear them, to bring forgiveness in areas where we need to forgive, then it opens us up to incredible things starting to be unleashed in our life. I see it. There's a woman right now in my program. She just started, right? She's just made that decision for herself to do the work. And already she's got incredible things starting to happen in her life. So here's the picture that I use that might help people to understand.
Yep.
I think of, like, if you thought of life as like a circle, I like to think of it as an oval for whatever reason, but, and then around that oval are like rooms. And each of those, the doors to each room represent a different part of our life, like maybe romantic relationship, career, right? Now there's a door for motherhood as well. And it's a door that we tend to just not look at. But consider the fact that when you go into any of those rooms don't exist independently. Those rooms are connected in the back to all of the other rooms. So when we don't pay attention to one part of our lives, it affects others, right? You've heard this before,
Yep.
I'm sure.
Yep.
But the thing is, we don't realize that there's a door called motherhood that we want to actually go in, that open, and a room to go into and work to do around it. And then when we do, I've heard women say, wow, this really affected how my business is going. This affected my romantic relationship. Like, things start to open up and you start to find a freedom, which is why I use the word freedom, power, and joy all the time, because there is a freedom you find. There is power that you gain, and then you find more joy in all of that.
That's wonderful feedback again. Thank you so very much. Now, when you do introduce yourself to a new person that might become a client, I guess, how do you meet them where they are? How do you find where their mindset is at the moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a couple of things. One's a tool, and well, I guess they're both tools. One is an assessment that they can take, and it just gives them some insight into different areas where maybe they haven't been looking. So they like, do you know anything about your fertility? Do you know anything about your body? Like, what do you understand, and how are you taking care of your body? Like, that would be an area. How are you taking care of your mindset? Do you talk about having a child or your dream of that with somebody? Do you talk about your fears around that with somebody? We tend to not. It's just this very silent topic. There's more of it now, for sure. There's definitely more narrative going on. That narrative I see is about things like, freezing your eggs. Yeah, that's usually it. Like, how do I get the insurance? Do I want to be a mom? It's usually, do I want to be a mom? And I should freeze my eggs for insurance. Those are the
Yeah,
things I hear
wow.
a lot about.
Do you talk much about single parenthood or the fear
I,
thereof?
I I offer, so part of my program is I do a bunch of interviews with different kinds of mothers. So a partnered mom, a single mom by choice,
Yep.
a a woman who is mom by adoption, and then someone who's a bonus mom or stepmom, right?
Yep.
So I give them the opportunity to hear other people's stories, like empowered stories. So that because there's a lot of the narrative I hear, and I just had somebody say this to me today. Like, I just hear a lot of, it's terrible, it's so hard, that's all that I ever hear. And no one gets to hear the good stories. They just hear all
The
the
upside.
complaining, you know? And
Yeah.
there are people who are like having really amazing experiences because they're not one, they really allowed themselves to create what they wanted. And two, they don't see motherhood as a detraction from their life, but as an enhancement to their life. And that's a mindset shift that, again, we are not taught. And when women get that, it's like, oh, I can do this how I want. And what happens in my program is they walk away with a sense of ownership. Like, I can own this. Like,
Yes.
I'm not a victim to all these narratives that I've heard since I was growing up or that I hear in the media, but I get to create this how I want. There are so many different kinds of ways that people are parents.
Yes, you are in control of your own destiny, as it were. Now,
Mhm.
in terms of, I guess, your coaching program, what's the modus operandi? Do you do it online? Do you do it face to face? Is it in a group or is it one to one? How do you deliver it?
It's a group. It's in a group, or I also do it one-on-one. It depends,
Mm.
on what somebody wants. But we do it in a group setting so that the women can have community and hear one another talk. Because
Yeah.
again, we don't talk about it so much. So, or have spaces to do it with one another. So I create a space for them so that they can hear what the other women are saying and not feel alone and go, oh, okay, yeah. Or get ideas about things they hadn't even thought about themselves. So actually, I want to go back to your other question about how do
Yes,
I
please do.
get into their mindset. So I do
Mm.
something as well called a motherhood clarity call, and I ask them a ton of questions about how they're relating to that helps to reveal, I should say, how they're relating to their motherhood story. So things like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how okay are you with missing motherhood? How like motherhood will complete me, or motherhood gives me a sense of belonging in the world, like those types of questions. And then they rate them and I ask them other open-ended questions, and it just starts to paint a picture of how they're relating to this part of their life.
Yes, that's great. Look at it's there are certainly processes behind all of this. Now, we've only really just scratched the surface of some of the work that you do, but
Yeah.
in closing this wonderful call, tell me, how does it make you feel when you see that transformation from when a woman comes to you and becomes a completely new person after working with
It's
you?
it's amazing. It's totally amazing. I mean, I get goosebumps, at times. We've had the first baby born of a woman who went through the program, so that was so cool. I got to go to her baby shower, and
Amazing.
yeah, it was
Yep.
so fun, to watch people get it. It's just it's cool.
There is a brave new world out there in front of everybody who's on the call today. If you want to learn more, certainly reach out to Beth. Now,
Mhm.
Beth, when people want to touch base with you and start the process for themselves, where do they go and find you? Where are the best locations?
Well, you can start at bethrivellicoaching.com, which I know is probably difficult to spell, but yeah, it's Beth, R-I-V as in Victor, E-L-L-I, coaching.com. Or you can
Yep.
find me on Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook. I'm on all of those social media platforms. That's probably the best way.
On
Yeah.
all the standard channels, you'll
Mm.
definitely find Beth. And again, that URL is bethrivellicoaching.com. Don't worry about spelling it. I'll make sure there's a clickable link below this post, no matter whether you
Awesome.
see this wonderful call. I hope you've enjoyed it, because I've enjoyed it. Now, if you are in this position where you want to learn more, again, visit bethrivellicoaching.com. And Beth, thank you so very much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you so much, Rick. This was such a pleasure. Really appreciate it.